The sun was dipping low over Sunnyvale Estates, painting the perfect rows of McMansions in that golden suburban glow that screamed, "We made it," gated, manicured, and ruled with an iron fist by the Sunnyvale HOA board. The neighborhood looked like a magazine spread, until you noticed the little yellow violation notices fluttering on half the mailboxes like surrender flags. I pulled my 5-year-old sedan up to the clubhouse gate, still smelling faintly of drywall dust and motor oil. My navy cotton dress was clean, technically, but it had spent the last 2 hours crammed in my trunk after a full day crawling through crawl spaces at 3 other properties my company managed. Wrinkled? Sure, but it beat showing up in steel-toed boots. Ethan's engagement party was already in full swing inside the glass-walled clubhouse I knew better than my own kitchen. I could hear the clink of champagne flutes and the fake laughter that only money can buy. When I stepped onto the terrace, the hum of conversation dipped like someone had hit mute. Eyes flicked my way, then away again, the universal suburban signal for "she doesn't belong." My brother Ethan spotted me first. He bounded over in his charcoal suit, all sunshine and cedar cologne, and pulled me into a hug that almost made the last 6 hours of zoning hell worth it. "ISA, you made it. Madison's been asking about you." His eyes flicked to my skirt for half a second, long enough to register the creases, but he smiled anyway. Work ran late. Raleigh site had a nightmare permit issue. Drove straight here. I kept my voice light. No need to ruin his night. Not yet. He led me toward the bar, where Madison stood like a queen holding court. Cream silk dress, blonde waves that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment on the studio I still pretended to rent, and a smile that could freeze hell. She turned, eyes dropping straight to my dress like it was roadkill on her perfect lawn. The warmth in her face lasted exactly 1 Miss America second before it iced over. "ISA," she cooed, voice pitched high enough for the whole terrace to hear. "We were starting to worry you got lost in traffic, or maybe just lost in general." She stepped closer, invading my space under the guise of a cheek kiss. Vanilla perfume and pure ambition choking the air. Ethan was already fetching her another rose like a good little fiancé. The second he was out of earshot, her whisper sliced in. "Look around. ISA, this is a high-end event. My friends are here. My parents' business partners. And you show up looking like you just crawled out of a construction dumpster. People are staring." She plucked an imaginary speck of dust off my shoulder and flicked it away with theatrical disgust. "Poor residents ruin the photos. Try to stay out of the background." "Okay." Then she pulled back, beaming that frozen smile for the nearby couple. "We want everything perfect tonight." A flash popped. Madison's little sister Kayla, 22, phone surgically attached, community social media manager, had captured the moment. "Got it," Filter replied. "You're welcome." She popped her gum and tapped away, probably already captioning it, when the +1 forgets the HOA aesthetic memo, faced with tears of joy. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I didn't need to look. I retreated to the railing, pretending to admire the view of the community I actually owned through 3 layers of LLCs. From up here, I could see every perfectly edged lawn, every compliant mailbox, every flagpole that had been cited last month for non-approved height. Sunnyvale Estates looked pristine. It was supposed to. My company, Lewis Grove HOA Services, made sure of it. But nobody here knew that the woman they were mocking for wrinkled cotton signed every landscaping contract, every pool chemical order, and every single check that kept their little kingdom running. Well, if it isn't the prodigal sister. Frank Reed's booming voice rolled over me like a bulldozer. Madison's dad, HOA treasurer, self-proclaimed facilities genius, and a man who approved every vendor invoice, swaggered up with his wife Tracy, the board president herself. Tracy's cocktail dress looked vacuum-sealed. Frank's suit shone like cheap polyester trying to pass for Italian. Rough day at the office? Frank chuckled. Swirling scotch. Or are you still doing those, what do you call them? Fix-it jobs. I work in property management. Frank. My standard understatement. Right. Right. Changing light bulbs and plunging toilets. Honest work. Tracy patted my arm with southern syrup that didn't hide the venom. We're just so proud of Ethan. Such a bright future. It's nice he found someone like Madison who can really elevate him. Image matters in a community like this. Dear, must be hard watching him soar while you're still figuring things out. I smiled tightly. I'm doing fine. Tracy. Oh, I'm sure you are. She glanced at my elbow smudge. If you ever need something more stable. Brightwell's always hiring receptionists. We could clean you up. Frank guffawed like she'd told the joke of the century. They walked away laughing, leaving me alone with the wind whipping my messy hair. I pulled out my phone, opened the email from my SOO Nina. Monday morning audit. Sunnyvale HOA vendor logs ready. The anger that had been simmering cooled into something dense and useful. They want to talk about image? About who belonged? Fine. Come Monday. The music was going to stop. To understand why I stood there swallowing bile while Tracy Reed offered me a receptionist job, you have to understand the architecture of the Lewis family. Ethan was the spire, tall, shiny, catching every eye. I was the foundation, buried, unseen, holding everything up. Our parents never said it out loud. But the message was clear. Invest in the golden boy. Keep the reliable daughter running. When Aunt Sarah died and left me her stake in a struggling property management firm, they begged me to sell it. It's a burden. ISA. Just take the cash and go on a trip. I looked at the balance sheet and saw opportunity. 3 years of nights and weekends learning every inch of the business, renegotiating waste contracts, swapping HVAC filters on schedule, buying out panic partners during a market dip. By 25, I'd turned it into Lewis Grove HOA Services. By 26, I'd leveraged it to quietly acquire the contract for Sunnyvale Estates itself. I never told them. I created blind trusts, Delaware, LLCs, layers so deep that if you Google the owner of Sunnyvale's management company, you'd find nothing but a faceless corporate shell. Anonymity was armor. It let me walk into HOA board meetings via Zoom with my camera off and listen while they bragged about saving the community with the very contracts I approved. It let me hear Frank Reed steer six-figure landscaping deals to his brother-in-law's shell company. It let me watch Tracy bury resident complaints about harassment and selective enforcement. Ethan, bless him, never suspected. When he moved to Charlotte for his engineering job and started dating Madison, he called me excited. Her whole family's on the HOA board. They're like a dynasty here. Dynasty. I almost laughed. Nepotism with better landscaping. Madison invited him to vetting lunches where Frank accidentally forgot his wallet. Ethan paid. He started dressing differently, talking about community image, desperate to impress the people who thought a wrinkled dress made someone trash. I let it happen. I let him feel like the provider. Because the moment I told him the truth, the family narrative would shatter. Ethan needed to be the star. I was the sturdy, slightly pitiable rock. Revealing I was the one who actually owned the rock would break something I wasn't ready to lose. So I stayed quiet, ISA. Low maintenance, ISA. The sister who scraped by. Back on the terrace. Frank was holding court at the bar, bragging about the new pool contract he'd just approved. Saved the board $15,000 by going with Apex Lawn and Pool. Guy's a genius. I knew Apex. Registered to a P.O. box in Gastonia. Registered agent, Gary Vance, Frank's ex-brother-in-law. $15,000 saved my ass. That contract was 20% over market and included phantom maintenance visits I could prove with security logs. Madison posed for another selfie, angling so I was conveniently out of frame. Kayla posted the story with a crying laugh emoji. I took a slow sip of water and watched them celebrate on my dime. The clubhouse invoice would hit my desk tomorrow. Every canopy, every flute of rose, every string of fairy lights they thought made them look elite was paid for by the management fees I controlled. The event manager, a sharp kid named Alex I'd hired 6 months ago, approached quietly. MS. Lewis, the invoice routed to your holding account, as usual. His voice was respectful, the exact opposite of the Reed's condescension. I nodded. Send the full packet to my desk. Every line item. He vanished. I looked across the room at Ethan laughing with Frank, Madison's arm around his waist like she owned him. They had no idea the woman, they just called a stain on the photo, signed the checks that kept their perfect little kingdom from collapsing under its own weight. Monday morning was coming, and unlike this party, I would not be late. Most people think power looks loud. Tracy's booming enforcement of the 2-inch grass rule. Madison's Instagram stories about elevating the brand. They think it's finding your neighbor for a political flag or writing up a widow for holiday lights that are too festive. Real power is silent. Real power is the current underneath the ship deciding where it goes. And I was the current. By the time I was 25, Lewis Grove HOA Services had become the invisible hand guiding Sunnyvale Estates. The board thought they ran the show. They voted on rules, collected dues, and felt important. But every vendor contract, every maintenance crew, every single dollar of the $2.4 million annual budget flowed through my company. I hired the CEO who ran day-to-day operations. I sat in the back of quarterly town halls looking like a junior consultant while they complained about the very budget cuts I'd authorized. The move to tighten enforcement last year, my decision. The sudden spike in landscaping costs, Frank's decision. And the quiet investigation I'd started 3 weeks ago after noticing duplicate invoices, also mine. They want to talk about image. They wanted to talk about who belonged in the photos. Fine. Come Monday, I was going to give them a picture they'd never forget. Most people assume power is loud. They picture Tracy Reed marching across a lawn with a tape measure screaming about grass height violations. Or Madison posting community standards rants on the neighborhood Facebook page. They think it's the woman who writes $250 fines for a forgotten trash can. Real power is the quiet email at 6 a.m. that quietly cancels a 6-figure vendor contract. Real power is the woman nobody notices sitting in the back row while the board pats itself on the back. I learned that the hard way. After Aunt Sarah's inheritance, I didn't chase flashy titles. I chased boring businesses, maintenance contracts, landscaping bids, pool chemical suppliers, recession-proof, invisible, exactly like me. Lewis Grove HOA Services sounded like old money. It wasn't. It was one woman in a studio apartment learning how to read a P&L statement at 2 a.m. while her parents bragged to friends about Ethan's latest promotion. 3 years ago, Sunnyvale's previous management company was bleeding money. Board infighting, vendor kickbacks, residents threatening lawsuits over selective enforcement. I sent my COO Nina in with a $15 million capital injection offer. The terms were brutal. 51% control, 3 board seats for my proxies, and the unilateral right to terminate any contract if metrics slipped for 2 quarters. They signed. They had no choice. The clause that let the Reeds sleep at night? Silent partner protocol. My name never appeared. The board thought they'd been rescued by some faceless New York firm. They had no idea the majority owner was the same woman they just offered a receptionist position to. I attended every quarterly review via Zoom. Camera off. Name listed only as LG Holdings Republic. I heard Frank brag about the great deal he got on Apex lawn and pool. I heard Tracy dismiss 3 separate resident complaints about her husband's nephew getting preferential treatment. I stored every word like data. The night of the engagement party, after Alex walked away with my instructions, I stood alone a moment longer. Ethan was laughing with Frank. hand on his shoulder like they were already family. Madison whispered something to Tracy, and they both glanced my way, smirking. They felt safe. They felt superior. I thought about the complex web of LLCs I'd built. I thought about the vendor audit Nina had already started with one text from me. My lawyer Derek once asked why I kept everything so layered. Why hide? ISA. Because when you're invisible, people show you who they really are. They don't edit themselves for the boss. They don't fake kindness for the check signer. I had the raw, unedited footage now. The reads weren't just rude. They were symptoms of rot inside my own investment. Frank in treasurer role, awarding contracts to family. Tracy in president role, burying complaints. Madison leveraging her engagement to push for stricter rules that conveniently exempted her own family's oversized RV parked in the driveway. Monday morning was going to be surgical. I couldn't fire them just for being mean. That would be emotional, petty, and lawsuit bait. I needed cause. Real cause. At home, I opened 3 monitors. Left, Sunnyvale organizational chart. Right, internal audit software. I typed to Derek, full access to vendor logs last 24 months. Frank read approvals. Cross-reference any entity under 3 years credit history. To Nina, HR-style audit on Tracy Reed. Pull every dismissed complaint. Patterns in hostile environment claims. I paused, thinking of Ethan. This would hurt him. No way around it. If the reads were dirty, and my gut screamed they were, he'd be caught in the crossfire. But I remembered Madison's whisper. Poor residents ruin the photos. That wasn't an insult. That was a worldview. A belief that some people were props and others were protagonists. I couldn't let that poison run my community. I hit send, then drafted the directive to Marcus. My proxy CEO, top-down compliance audit of Sunnyvale Clubhouse and common areas effective immediately. Team on site, 8 a.m. Do not announce. Freeze all digital logs. Significant breaches suspected in vendor protocols and enforcement code. Signature, ISA Lewis. No title. They knew what that meant. I closed the laptop. The Reeds thought Monday was another day to strut into the clubhouse, drink the free coffee, and push people around. They thought they were the main characters. They were about to learn the entire stage had just been bought out from under them. The story of how Ethan met Madison is the story of a moth finding a very expensive flame. It happened 6 months before the party, right in the belly of the beast I controlled. Ethan started his new engineering gig consulting on smart home infrastructure for the community. The clubhouse cafeteria, organic salad bar, and espresso machines I'd personally approved became ground zero. He told me the story later, eyes glazed with that dangerous infatuation. Madison touched his arm in line. You're going to cause a gridlock if you don't pick turkey or ham. She knew his name already. She knew everyone's name. She invited him to her table, the center of gravity where the Board family sat. Suddenly, Ethan felt like he belonged in the in crowd. Her whole family's on the board, he gushed. It's like a dynasty. Dynasty. I bit my tongue. It sounded like nepotism with better HOA stickers. As months passed, Ethan polished himself to fit. New watch, buzzwords, anxiety about community image. Madison started dropping hints about his executive potential. Frank promised to put in a good word. The engagement happened fast, for months. Madison wanted the clubhouse party. It sends the right message, she said. Ethan wanted a backyard barbecue. She won. 2 weeks before the party, he showed me the spreadsheet of costs Madison had sent. $20,000 for one night. She said if we start cheap, people will treat us cheap. I looked at my brother drowning in debt to impress people who thought my wrinkled dress made me lesser. I could have ended it then. One call to Nina and Frank's contracts would have been frozen. But I needed Ethan to see the truth himself. So I smiled and said I'd try to dress up. That afternoon, I pulled up the Apex vendor file again. Sloppy. Arrogant. Duplicate invoices for emergency pool diagnostics. On-date security footage showed no crew ever arrived. Phantom work. I could have ended it that day. Instead, I waited. Because when the music stopped, I wanted the whole board dancing on my floor when the lights came on. Monday arrived crisp and merciless. I was already in the management suite above the clubhouse by 6 a.m. Charcoal suit sharp, hair pulled back, leather portfolio in hand. Nina had the wall monitor glowing with red flag transactions. "Show me," I said. She expanded the cluster. Apex lawn and pool. Every payment Frank approved stayed just under the automatic review threshold. $48,000 in the last 18 months for emergency services that never happened. Gary Vance, Frank's ex-brother-in-law, registered agent. We got security logs proving zero crew access on bill dates. Plus kickback transfers to Frank's personal account. He feels untouchable. Tracy's file was worse. 3 buried harassment complaints. Reclassified as miscommunication. 1 victim transferred with a pay freeze. Tracy had presented herself as the nurturing gatekeeper of community standards while silencing residents who dared question her family's exemptions. Madison's social media stories from this morning were already up. Power move era. Future director of engineering incoming ring. Kayla had cropped me completely out of last night's photos and added the charity case shot with laughing emojis. Comments from other residents were turning sour. The resentment was building beautifully. Then Frank's office line lit up on the monitor. We patched the audio. "Gary, submit that generator invoice today. $9,500. Emergency diagnostic. Madison wants those floral arrangements for the wedding. Bill it before lunch." We recorded every word. He had just authorized fraud on a company line. Nina looked at me. "We can lock them out right now. Cut badges. Escort them." I shook my head. "Not yet. I need them to perform one last time. Let them strut in expecting to be worshipped. They'll hang themselves in public." My phone buzzed. Text to Ethan. Copied to Madison. Things were tense Saturday. "I've arranged a special meeting at the clubhouse this morning with some executive track people. Consider it an engagement gift. They can map out your future." 9 a.m. Sharp. I knew exactly how it would land. Ethan would see an olive branch. Madison would see a ladder. At 8:45, I waited in the marble lobby of the clubhouse management wing. The morning rush hummed around me, residents dropping off forms. Maintenance crews clocking in. Everyone who worked the actual community greeted me by name. The board members? They'd never once looked twice at the consultant in the back row. The revolving door spun. The entire Reed clan poured in. Frank in his too shiny suit. Tracy in power pink. Madison clinging to Ethan's arm in cream silk. Even Kayla scrolling her phone. They spotted me by the security desk. Ethan smiled. Relieved. "ISA. You look great, really professional." Madison's eyes narrowed, trying to reconcile Saturday's disaster with today's tailored look. Cute suit. Interview outfit. Frank stepped forward like he owned the place. "Ethan said you know some career people." Nice gesture, but I already have the VP's ear. "We probably don't need your little contacts." Tracy glanced at security. "Do we need visitor passes?" Normally Frank just swipes us in. Loud enough for everyone to hear. She wanted them to know I was the outsider. I turned to David, head of security, former military, 5 years under my payroll. "Good morning, MS." "Lewis," he said, voice clipped with respect. He produced the heavy black master executive card. No visitor sticker. Gold chip gleaming. "Elevator 8 is holding for you." The silence was deafening. Frank stared at the card he knew only owners and emergency services carried. "How did you?" "Let's go up," I said calmly. We stepped into the private executive elevator. The button for the management suite glowed authoritative blue. Madison's voice trembled. "That floor is restricted. We could get in trouble." I stared at the doors. You said the clubhouse was your home turf. You should feel comfortable anywhere. The doors opened directly into the private lobby. Waiting there, Marcus, my proxy CEO, and Nina holding a thick file folder. Marcus bowed his head slightly. Good morning, MS. Lewis. We're ready for you. Nina's gaze was cold. All relevant parties present. Ma'am. Conference room A prepped. I stepped out. The click of my heels echoed like gunshots. Thank you both. I turned to the Reeds, still frozen in the elevator. Please step into my office. Madison moved first, legs shaky. She saw the brushed steel logo on the wall. Lewis Grove, HOA Services. Her brain short-circuited. You own this? I own the management company that owns the contract, the common areas, and 51% voting control over the board. I corrected quietly. So yes, in every way that matters. I own your entire neighborhood. Frank clutched his chest. Impossible. You fix toilets. I manage assets. Frank, Sunnyvale is an asset. Right now, both assets have a serious pest problem. Tracy whimpered. Kayla finally looked up from her phone. Wait, why is everyone being weird? Madison screamed, a raw, primal sound. You set us up. I gestured toward the glass-walled conference room. Inside, all of you. Now, it wasn't a request. They followed. They had no choice. The mahogany table gleamed under recessed lights. I sat at the head. Marcus to my right, Nina to my left, Derek my lead counsel sliding the heavy folder across the wood. It stopped in front of Frank. That, I said, is the $9,500 invoice you authorized this morning to Apex. The bank records showing transfers to your personal account, and affidavits from 3 vendors confirming you solicited kickbacks. Frank went gray. Underneath, I continued, looking at Tracy, are the recovered emails you thought you deleted. Every time you buried sexual harassment complaints to protect your husband's network. Tracy put her head in her hands. And finally, I said to Madison, the transcript of your lobby conversation this morning threatening a receptionist and leveraging a non-existent promotion for Ethan. Madison stared at the folder like it was a live grenade. I told you I had an engagement gift, I said. The gift is the truth. You're not a dynasty. You're a liability. Tracy recovered first, voice trembling with curated victimhood. ISA, is this how you handle family? You ambush us. Think about Ethan. He's finally happy and you're burning it down over a few accounting errors. She reached for Ethan's hand. He pulled away. Frank tried the good old boy route. Look, ISA, you're a businesswoman. Everyone takes a little slice. It greases the wheels. You should be thanking me for keeping this place running. I leaned forward. That's how prison sentences are built. Frank, at Lewis Grove, we don't steal from ourselves. Kayla lifted her phone. I'm live. 20,000 followers watching you abuse power and fire working-class employees. Derek didn't even look up. Recording in a private executive session violates privacy statutes in your employment handbook. Post it, and I'll file a $10 million defamation suit. Your parents are already under audit. You won't have the liquidity to fight. Kayla lowered the phone. Defeated. Madison's turn. She collapsed into theatrical sobs at Ethan's feet. I just wanted us to be a family. I wanted to help you get promoted. Ethan looked down at her, then at me. His voice was quiet but clear. Open the folder. Madison. Every email. Every transfer. The room fell silent as he processed. Then Madison's mask slipped again when an intern accidentally spilled water on her sleeve. You idiot, she shrieked, shoving him. The same venom I'd heard Saturday night. Ethan's face changed. Recognition. Disgust. You told me you love my family, he said quietly. But you mock my sister for her clothes. You treat staff like garbage. Madison, do you actually love me? Or do you just love the platform you thought I'd become? She stammered. He pulled the engagement ring from his pocket, the modest diamond he'd saved 6 months for, and placed it gently on the table next to the termination papers. The engagement is over. Madison screamed. Frank and Tracy gathered their shredded dignity and moved toward the door. Nina opened it. Security is waiting at the elevator. Your badges have already been deactivated. They shuffled out. Madison practically carried by her father, still sobbing blame at everyone but herself. The door clicked shut. Only Ethan, our parents, and I remained. Mom walked over, eyes wide at the office. The name on the wall. The woman she'd underestimated for 29 years. I said, we didn't know. You never asked, I said simply. Dad nodded, ashamed. We thought Ethan was the one who needed our pride. We didn't realize you were carrying the weight. I stood. I don't need your pride. I just needed you to respect me, even when I wore the wrinkled dress. I put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. He covered it with his own. Thank you, he whispered. It hurts like hell, but thank you. Better a sharp pain now than a lifetime of bleeding. I walked toward the door. Marcus needs to issue a staff statement about the leadership changes. You guys take your time. Ethan called out. What happens to them now? I smiled faintly. They become what they always were. Irrelevant. I stepped into the hallway. Phones rang. Keyboards clicked. The community kept moving, cleaner, fairer, stronger. No triumph surge. No gloating. Just balance restored. Gravity had done the rest. I clicked my heels toward the next meeting, ready for whatever petty violation noticed the universe threw at me next. Because in Sunnyvale Estates, the woman in the wrinkled dress had always been the one writing the rules. Thank you for listening to this HOA Karen story. I hope you enjoyed watching justice serve cold. Drop a comment. Where are you tuning in from today? If ISA's quiet power move gave you life, smash that like button, subscribe, and share with every neighbor dealing with their own HOA nightmare. See you in the next one.